passing every test. Teaching tricks that make the students shine. From Florida Tech with the love divine.
Hey Panthers, I'm Anushka, instructional designer in academic technologies, and today I'm super excited to share with you that our team is doing a podcast series, and this first episode is going to be special not only because it's the first one, but also because I'm joined by my awesome co-star Paulina, who's going to help me create some objectives for a presentation for my speech class, so that way you can follow along and kind of see what that process looks like. So Paulina, thank you so much for helping me.
Hi, Anushka. I'm happy to be here, and I'm so happy to be part of the Academic Technologies Department as well. Today, we're going to see a bunch of tools and a couple of tricks that can help you to enhance your presentations, but also what's underneath the psychology and the cognitive process under designing a good PowerPoint. So, I am going to start by telling you a little bit about my background. So I have a bachelor's in graphic design, and later on I dedicate myself to education, and I have a master's in STEM education from Florida Tech. So I am a former Panther. Panther for life. I have it over here. Yeah, here. I'm a Panther for life. So. And I'm really happy to be in this department and helping faculty and also students to become better educators and better students.
Awesome. Well, we've loved having you so far. So let's go ahead and get into it. So we're going to learn how to create the best presentation ever. Yeah?
Yeah. So crafting the best presentation ever. And first we're going to start with a quote I really like. And it says, a presentation is never just about the facts. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, I really like that quote because coming from a communication background myself, you know, we preach different ways to share material in a presentation, right? You don't want it to have too many words. You want to make sure you incorporate an image that's high resolution, that's captivating for the audience, that's relevant. So I really like that quote.
Yeah. Me too. Presentations is more about how do you connect with your audience. So we're going to talk about that right now. So the objectives for this session, for this part of the podcast. So we're going to reflect in your audience target, who are you going to design your slides for, set your good objectives for your presentation, for your content, review Bloom's taxonomy in order to set these good objectives, and we're going to review the principles of multimedia theory and cognitive load theory.
This is awesome, actually. I'm glad that you mentioned this, Paulina, because these are things that are new for me. We learn core principles and basic foundational things, like connecting with the audience and knowing who your audience is to deliver the message in a right way. But these acronyms, I'm excited to learn more about them and show me the way.
Yeah, I'm excited too. It's not complicated. It really makes sense once you read through it. So we're gonna go through it in a little bit. So the first thing that we need to know is, who are you going to design your PowerPoints for? So for example, you can have multiple audience type. For example, you can have kids as your audience, or undergraduate students or graduate students, maybe elderly people, very, very smart students like Sheldon Cooper that know it all. Or even we can have people that don't really want to be in your class and they will be bored and they will not be listening. So make sure you are aware of the target audience that you are directing to. Mm-hmm. So in your case, for example, tell us a little bit about the course that you were designing, and who is your target audience in your case?
Yeah, sure. So I typically teach COM 2370, which is a speech course, so public speaking. And I would say the target audience is usually sophomores, juniors, but you tend to have sometimes seniors who need an elective, or maybe, this is a required course, or students just want to take something that's outside of what they typically take, if they're engineering, science, etc.
So what you do first, you do it unconsciously, but we're going to try to do this consciously.
Okay, let's try.
So we're going to run a learner analysis of your class,
Okay.
of your target population
Okay.
in this case. And we're going to do it in 3 parts. First of all, we're going to define what age or grade, just said what kind of age or
Like
grade
20
they are.
or 21 years old, probably.
And sophomores mainly.
Sophomore, juniors,
Juniors,
yeah.
okay. So we're in that stage, kind of in the middle of their of their careers.
Correct.
So next thing we're gonna know about is what their entry behaviors are. I mean, entry behaviors is about what is their skill set, or what is their prerequisite to be in your class, what things they need to know before. So in your case, what would that be?
Yeah. From the simple perspective, I would say that they generally have a good understanding of how to write effectively, how to read. I mean, communication is definitely a social aspect, right? So I think that they communicate with their peers, but in this class it's different because it's typically one person who's the subject matter expert delivering content, right? Similar to teaching. So
Right. Also, probably they will need to have like a certain level of spoken English and written English.
Right.
Right. So that will be also some entry behaviors we need to, have, even if they're simple, and you kind of, I don't know how to say this, but they have to be with you, yet like a skill set. Sometimes we underestimate that they're maybe not there. So let's follow. And the last thing, in my personal opinion, is the most important one, is the motivation. They have to be in your class. This is a core course for communications? This is an elective? What kind of class do you teach?
yeah, I would say most of my students honestly are not communication majors. I want to change that, but they come from business backgrounds, engineering, science, aviation. So, whenever we do our intros at the beginning of the semester, share a little bit about who you are, what's your major, and why you're taking this course, right? And a lot of the responses is it's a required course, or it's an elective, or a lot of times I hear, I want to get better at public speaking because it's relevant to my major or the career that I want to go into. So there's a little bit of different motivations, but, they kind of spread across that spectrum.
So it's very important to that small survey you make at the beginning of your class gives you valuable information to know what kind of motivation your students have. So because you're dealing with human beings, right? The human-centered approach is a very good way of looking at it, because you are doing mainly 2 things when you're dealing with humans. First of all, you solve a need. In this case, you're solving a need of education. You solving a need of elective. You're solving the need of a requisite for the majors, right? So you are offering them the possibility to be in your class for solving their needs, their educational needs. But because we are not machines, we are also centered in empathy.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a very good way to look at it in a empathy way, right?
Right.
And I'm going to show you a quote I really like, and we can talk about that later.
Sure.
So presentations are about conversing, sharing, and connecting at an intellectual and emotional level in an honest and sincere way. So here we can say we're talking about 2 things about human center. We are sharing and connecting. We are conversing, but we are doing it in an emotional, intellectual, honest, and sincere. I love those words because they really make us human, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's really powerful because when I approach my students, I let them know that, I have expertise in this subject matter, but I don't know everything, right? And just like my students have had experiences that they can also teach me. So I definitely emphasize that it's a symbiotic relationship, right? like we're working together in this course. I will help you. If you have something to show me, I'm definitely open to learning. I understand that there's a heavy course load, right? Students have a lot on their plates, relationships, finances. There's so many things as adults, right? We say adulting is hard, but there's a lot of different aspects that they bring into the classroom with them. And it can be very challenging, right? If they're hungry,
Right.
if they're tired, if they're struggling to find an internship, all those things kind of impact them as people. And so I
Yeah.
try and be sensitive to that and encourage them. And I want them to, share in creativity and know that this class, even though it might seem boring or difficult, like we can have fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that you point out the fun in this. I always like to quote one of my favorite teachers in the world. Her name is Rita Pearson. Please go ahead and see her TED Talk. It's wonderful. She says that education, it's about human connection. It's about the relationship that we have with our students and with our colleagues. And also you have to realize that students, especially in this age, they're still, in development, and sometimes they're not aware of what they want for their life, so they're kind of figuring it out.
I think we've all been there, right?
Yeah, we all been there. So what happens is that people don't learn from people that they don't like. So sometimes if you are you practice empathy, you can have a powerful connection, and that leads you for them to learn better.
Right. And it's not a popularity contest either, right? I
Yeah.
know there's professors who I've done it, right? It's like, oh, I want my class to get filled. I really have a lot of information I want to share with the students. So yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's not about, doing something that is not natural in you. You're not going to be, the class clown because that's not in you. But at least, care.
Yeah.
Care. It's not that you're going to lecture, you're going to open a textbook, you're going to lecture, you're going to close it, and you're going to leave. Right?
Or
Because
here's the PowerPoint, read it,
Yeah.
and ask me questions if you have them.
Exactly. Because we're teaching human beings, so we have to have that in mind. So I am going to follow with the second part of this, which is setting good objectives. So we already talk about audience, our students, but now we have to have clear objectives. Sometimes we have objectives already set up in our syllabus, but for our specific presentation or content that we are going to give in that moment, we have to have the following structure. Okay, so the objectives usually are created by a BCC law that it states that we have to have a behavior, a condition, and a criteria in each one of our objectives. So I'm going to start with the objectives I have for this podcast.
Okay.
So the objective is for you to create a clear and visually effective PowerPoint presentation. In the first part, we can see the create. Create is the behavior because it's the verb that will lead us to do something.
Okay.
The second thing is the condition. A PowerPoint presentation. So A state that is one, and it is a PowerPoint presentation, right? And the last thing is the criteria, clear and visually effective. So could you tell me one of the objectives you have for your class?
Sure. I'm a little nervous. I feel on the spot, right? Whenever we create something, we can feel vulnerable
Yes.
and sharing that, but I'm definitely on this path with everyone. So for the listeners,
I just want to point out something. Anushka is an instructional designer, so she knows very well what she's talking about. And
so kind.
Yeah, and she's just an expert in her field. We are all learning here, so this is just a way of shrinking and be more concrete and more effective with our PowerPoints.
Oh, thanks, Paulina. So one of the objectives I have for my course, right? So maybe to help frame it, is to practice various forms of public speaking, empowering you to be more confident and effective as a communicator. But what we're working on today is how to create an objective for a presentation, right? So one of the chapters that I have a chapter from the textbook that I have a PowerPoint for is mastering the art of storytelling.
Ooh.
So I want that to be, is that an objective or no?
It is a big umbrella of an objective, but keep going. I want to know more.
Sure. So mastering the art of storytelling, in the textbook anyways, it talks about creating that connection like we're talking about, right? So, usually humans, we engage and we make connections by listening to stories. Mm-hmm. So for speech specifically, it's utilizing a story whenever you give a speech of any kind, and usually that will create an emotional response and your audience will be more receptive.
Yeah, I like that objective. We're going to put it right here, right now. So mastering the art of storytelling. So that's the big objective that you want to teach in your PowerPoint.
Right.
So mastering is a big word. How you can
we like big words,
yeah,
Paulina.
How you can master something. So how do I master a subject in one PowerPoint? It's ambitious, right? It's
difficult.
Very ambitious, yeah. and difficult. So that could be the big umbrella that will cover parts of our course or parts of our term in this case. But in order to have more effective PowerPoint presentations, you might want to make a small chunks out of this mastering, which is master.
Right.
For me to master something, I have to
takes time.
Probably takes time and a lot of study. For being a master in something, you need at least 2 years, right?
Right.
So how are we going to master something? Maybe, and I will come back to the PowerPoint really fast. Avoid behaviors that cannot really be measurable. So how you can we can measure mastering, but we can measure it in many parts, right?
And it's not really realistic for one semester either. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. So avoid, for example, big words like mastering, because they're ambitious and they're not bad. They're really good objectives because we really want our students to master something. But instead of mastering, why don't we come back to the very basis and, for example, identify.
Okay.
For example, identify. And these verbs are, that's why we're going to point out Bloom's taxonomy, because the purpose of the Bloom's taxonomy is to set up our objectives and especially our behaviors to promote deeper and more meaningful learning. So they promote higher order thinking, and encourage active learning. But at the same time, it shrinks our big objective of mastering in small chunks of it. So, and it goes from hierarchy. So
basic principles are on the bottom, and it goes up to be. So mastery, quote unquote, would be on the top where it's the create section.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if you master something, it seems like you can transfer that knowledge to create, innovate, do something new. So we already talked about this before, but if you applied Bloom's taxonomy, what will be your new objectives under mastering?
Well, you mentioned identify, and I think that's usually pretty common across different fields, right? If you have aviation, you want to identify, parts of an aircraft. In science, you want to identify parts of a molecule or whatever that is, right? So what if I did something like identify the parts of a story, right? So if we're trying to master the art of storytelling, I want to get to a story, but I need to pick a story, choose a story, identify the parts that make that story.
That's wonderful. So that's something that you really can, and you will be able to really measure the identifying because you can have parts of it. So how many parts in identify are 5, 6? So now
introduction, character development, conclusion, right?
So what other objectives?
So usually I teach, at the end of a presentation, you want to have like a call to action or a key message or takeaway. So I think that's really important. And I think in the Bloom's taxonomy,
I'm going to come back to it.
Yeah. So prioritize the key message and takeaway. So I think that needs to be pretty evident, right? So when I'm creating a PowerPoint presentation, I want to prioritize the parts that are most important because we only have 50 minutes or an hour 15.
Right.
So I really need to choose what's the most critical in that time frame.
Yeah. Don't you think that chunking the big this big and ambitious objective, it's easier for you to assess?
Definitely.
Afterwards?
I think it can feel a little overwhelming because now that we're talking through it, I can definitely see, okay, here's the textbook, and this is how I structured it. Here's the textbook. These are all really important principles. I'll do a presentation on each. But what's really underneath that layer, right? And I think it can feel overwhelming sometimes because it takes more work. Truthfully,
Exactly.
It's going to take more work.
So if you're able to draft better objectives and more approachable objectives, then your job comes easier because you're able to assess them in every class.
Yeah, and
So
I want to throw one more in there,
Okay,
Paulina.
please do.
So let's do illustrate using a storyboard because we talk about, the balance of pictures and words.
Yes.
And I'd really like to emphasize that image and illustration component to bring the message home.
Awesome. So you have 3 levels or cognitive levels that are implied in the Bloom's taxonomy. So you have more approachable and very good objectives underneath the umbrella of mastering. So now you can really master them, and you can really measure how you're going to master them.
Okay.
So I'm going to come back to my presentation and say that for every objective, there will be a good assessment criteria. So because you already have 3 very powerful objectives, you're able to create an assessment criteria.
It looks like a rubric in Canvas.
It is. Actually, it is a rubric in Canvas. And you can have all your objectives. You can see here you have the identification of the story, the
Understanding of each element.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The use of evidence, the clarity on organization, the key messages, takeaway that you were talking about, the big takeaway, and the illustrations. And I highlighted only the meeting expectation part because we really want that to be, that's the mastering, right? That's what we need. We need to master all of these other criteria. So there you go. There you have your class.
That's awesome. And there's another really cool tool that we have in Canvas, Conmigo tools. Paulina, you've been working a lot with that, and that helped create this rubric that you guys see here.
Yes. So if you haven't done so, please go and check out our website and our Academic Technologies website. We have there a PDF or how you can enable your Conmigo teacher tools that can really help you draft your objectives and create awesome rubrics for your Canvas course.
It's AI powered. It's super fast, easy.
Yes, please go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk a little bit about multimedia theory.
Okay.
These are 2 theories developed by Richard Meyer and Sweller too, the cognitive law theory. And both of them are centered in humans, and they help us know better how our brain, how our memory, how our learning occur, and how our process are developed. So the principles under multimedia theory are that we have 2 channels. Each one of these channels has limited capacity, and the idea underneath this is to have a perfect equilibrium between both of them. For example, let's say that we have a PowerPoint that is dense in text, and you don't have any pictures on it. So probably the chances are that you will remember better from what your professor is saying than really the content of your slide. But we will see that later.
Yeah.
So our working memory has 2 channels, as I said before. We have pictures and words. And We learn better when we blend both of these channels at the same times, like having a few pictures and some words, or have very good pictures and I speak the words,
Right.
more than just one of them by itself.
Okay.
Right?
This is a small disclaimer. When I talk about pictures and words, especially when we talk about words, we are talking about written words. If we are talking about overloading the visual channel, the written words are meant to be also visual aid. So what we want to look for a PowerPoint is to use high quality pictures, for example, and less written wording, and try to speak more instead of writing in a PowerPoint and try to read from your slides, because then you're going to overload both channels. You're going to overload the visual channel and the auditorial channel if you read from your slides. So it's better to have pictures and just a few words written, and it's better to explain with your own words, so you're using also the auditorial channel.
And I'm going to show you a slide that really violates that principle. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yikes.
What do you think about this?
I'm overwhelmed.
You're overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. We have all seen this before, haven't we?
I have. Yes,
we
for
all
sure.
have. So I'm not gonna judge this, because we all been here, especially when we are teachers and we don't have time, and we seek for maybe publisher.
That looks like publisher created content
Yeah.
for sure.
What do you think about that? We are all been there. I mean, I'm not gonna judge that,
Right.
but we are here to
Right.
to learn. Best
Well, I think it's
practice.
important for us to take ownership of the material, right? I'm not sure exactly who creates the publisher created content. Chances are, that's their job. Their job is to create the PowerPoint, but you're the one that has to deliver the content. So if you know that that's not really relevant or it's not working for your students, you're empowered to make that change, right? And use
Right.
other tools and skills like we're talking about here in making a presentation that's more effective for the students.
Yeah, and don't feel guilty if you haven't been here. I'm gonna guide you through this example. I took this from the internet. It's not something I've seen in a professor here or anything. I took this example from the internet, and we're gonna try to make it better.
Thank you
So-
for that disclaimer. It's not anyone's PowerPoint slide.
No, anyone. But if you feel related to this, yeah.
Well, there's so much information, right? And I think professors have so much knowledge and they want to share everything, because they want the students to have all these tools. But realistically, we've talked about bandwidth and how much working memory students actually have at different points in the day and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to come back to that slide later, but now I'm going to guide you through the other theory, which is the cognitive load theory. And I'm going to start with another picture. So imagine that you're in a classroom and the teacher explaining a complex math problem while writing equations on a board, showing a diagram and talking all at once. What will you feel if you see this slide?
I don't even know where to start, not just
Right.
because I'm not a big fan of math. Sorry, math professors. But there's no structure, right? It's just a whole bunch of information. And maybe if I saw it happen in process, but if I wanted to go back and look at my notes and I struggled, I don't know where to start.
Yeah, so I have a picture of Anushka looking at this, and she looks a little bit like
Which
this.
picture did you choose?
This one.
Oh, yeah, that's me. Furious.
Furious, right? So what happens in this case is that cognitive load theory explains that our brain have a limited amount of mental energy, and we are not very good at this. And it's hard to handle all this information at the same time. So we are overloaded with too much information. It's hard to focus, to understand, to remember. And I want you to think about if you were a glass of water. So if you pour too much, you overflow, right? So this is a clear example of a mental breakdown. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. So the principles of cognitive load theory is that our working memory overloads easily, as I said previously, and if it overloaded, the learning will not occur. And we have to learn to balance intrinsic and germane load, and I'm going to talk about that right now.
Great.
So our working memory has three different main parts. First of all is our intrinsic cognitive load, which is our skill set. So for example, if I am in aviation major, probably I will have a few math courses before, maybe physics, maybe meteorology. I have a skill set. Right. But if I am new, for example, let's say I'm a graphic designer and I go to Calculus 1, probably I will be overloaded because I don't have any previous skill set. Mm-hmm. So for you as a teacher, your responsibility is to simplify this. And again, we're going to link this to our learner analysis and our classroom and how is the entry behaviors to know how to simplify and how to identify the intrinsic load that our students have. The second part of this is we have an extraneous cognitive load. Extraneous is everything that distracts our working memory for new information, is everything that is noise. So it could be something in your PowerPoints, for example, we can see the frame that ugly PowerPoint had, or we can, for example, the noise that is outside, there a construction site, everything that distract me for learning is an extraneous cognitive load, and our work as a teacher is to constrain that noise. I'm going to show you an example of an extraneous cognitive load, and you can tell me what you think about it. What do you think about this?
It's similar to the other slide. I mean, I like that there's colors and there's different shapes to kind of structure and organize. But again, I don't understand if I should go top down, left to right. There's a lot of text. There's a lot of moving parts. It looks like a process of some sort, right? Yeah. And I personally would like to see it broken down into smaller steps. Yeah, exactly. That's more digestible so I can follow along, because as we know, if a professor is talking and the students are furiously taking notes and they're trying to listen and there's all these moving parts, I'm not really sure that the message is going to get across. Yeah, and what happens is that you lost the focus of your students, mm-hmm. right? So they are not engaged anymore. And if you go back to the slide and we see all the noise that's happening here, all the graphics, the supporting graphics that it has, the title. See, the title says "Understanding the End Game." Do you understand the end game here? No, I don't see even the beginning of it. I know, right? So it's hardly for me to understand the end. What is the end game? We are not going to judge these designs because probably it might make more sense to people who are more familiar, right? But even if you have some sort of background or some sort of knowledge, if this is difficult content to understand, right? If I still had a skill set and I'm kind of familiar, but I still struggle with this, I'm going to feel overwhelmed. Exactly. So we're going to come back to when we talk about extraneous cognitive load, and you as a teacher, you will have to reduce, right? Constrain the extraneous load. Mm-hmm. So in the previous slide that we saw, what we need to do is, and you had the key message here. Mm-hmm. What we need to do in this case is to break down this in smaller chunks. Mm-hmm. So instead of having just one very packed of information slide, we can divide this in 5 or 6 different slides. It's not a problem about the amount of slides. It's about the amount of information you put in just one, right? You condense information in one slide, and that's not very good. So lastly,
so reduce. And lastly, we are going to talk about germane cognitive load. So once you master the power of reducing the extraneous cognitive load and you have a balanced intrinsic cognitive load, you probably will have germane process in your brain, which is the deep processing of new information, integrating with previous learning. So actually here you can access to the transfer. So you will create, let's say that you will create a folder in your brain for saying,
right,
with all this new information that you can recall later. So the idea underneath this is to maximize the germane cognitive load, right? So if we come back to this slide that we saw previously, I'm going to guide you through what we could do with this. First of all, we need to understand that who is really benefiting from this slide, right? Who benefit? Of course, our students are not.
right,
And probably I'm going to use this as a teleprompter for me to read from.
right. So it's more professor specific. It's geared
Centered.
more toward, yes, it's
Yeah.
more geared towards the professor.
Exactly. It's professor-centered, right? So what you said it before, the idea is to break all of these ideas into smaller chunks. And one of the multimedia principles is that we can segment, we can signalize, and we can time, right? And by what you just saw, I just did it. I segment, I signalize, and I timed. And make sure that you see our small capsules that we have in our website that will be available soon. And I can show you how to do this in PowerPoint.
Perfect. I'm loving these transitions and graphics, Paulina.
And it's really easy. But again, just watch them, small capsules and videos, and you will be able to master.
Nice.
I love that word, master. I'm going to use it.
You can have it.
Yeah. So if we come back to the slide again, I really want to use this one. First of all, we have a title. So the most important thing of your presentation is not the title, it's actually the content, right?
Right.
So the introduction that we have here, you can actually speak it because you already have to know this. So why do we write it? Probably because we want to read from it.
Or if we need a cue.
Yeah.
Right.
So we need to speak about the introduction. What we really, it's our content, it's our bullet points. The number 1, 2, 3 until 5. Until 7. And it's criteria, scoring, whatever it is. So that's really what we want to talk about in this slide. So this is how I will do it. You know, this is just an approach of what my expertise will do it. But again, you can do it any other way you like it.
Right.
But probably I will do a smaller title because this is not the most important thing about my presentation. It's about the bullet points. So we saw the first one, second one, third one, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Nice.
So you follow along. I don't know about the content about the slide, but I just took the main ideas. So you can follow as I speak. Mm-hmm. So first, if I'm going to talk about criteria, scoring, you will follow along. It's like a cat following a laser kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you will have engaged students because they will follow along and they will not be focused on reading from your slide.
Right.
Right? So to do a little bit of a recap of today's session, because we're almost about to end this awesome podcast.
Super fun.
Yeah, super fun. Multimedia and cognitive theory, they help you to learn better and helps people learn better, right? How? We're reducing the extraneous load and promoting germane process.
Okay.
Right? And I want to show one last thing, and I want your
it a quote?
opinion. It could be.
It could be.
So, how do you think
Yay.
about this?
Let's see. Know your power. Remember why you are in front of the audience. A great power comes with a great responsibility. Spider-Man reference. Love it. Yeah, I'm glad that we had the time to sit down and kind of talk through these things because I think once we've been educators for so long, once we get used to doing something for so long, we kind of forget our why, what we love about the job, why we're educators, what we love about the subject matter. Are we finding new content, new resources for the students? And, one of my favorite things about teaching is the relationships that I form with my students. Yes. And there's no better feeling than when they have an aha moment, or the light bulb goes off, or they ask a question, or they want to hang out and talk about school related stuff, or, anything else that comes to mind. Yes. And I really love that.
Well, and my final takeaways for this is that know your power. It means that you're here for a reason. You're here because you're the expert. That you're here because your qualifications made you be here, and know that power and use it at the favor of your students. So transfer that knowledge to your students, and know that you have a big responsibility in this case. So that's my big takeaway. Your job is very important, and we really want you to be the best professor that you can be. Mm-hmm. So I am going to finish with a little bit of our references and what books can you take from the library here in Florida Tech in the Evans Library, but also some videos that you can see from YouTube. And we are going to say goodbye until the next time, and we will be here on another podcast talking about how to make the best presentation of your life.
Thank you, Paulina.
Thank you, Anushka.
Best practices on the podcast waves, inspiring educators to be bold and brave. Tune into Learning Lights every week.